With the price of GPUs these days, especially near the top end, you might be considering putting that shiny new 5090 into an aging PC. But with these latest GPUs supporting PCIe 5, just how much performance are you leaving on the table by using an older motherboard, or if your current motherboard splits off PCIe lanes for other uses, such as an NVMe drive, or if you try to run 2 GPUs? Taking a quick look at our test system, and we are using a Ryzen 7 9800X3D with an MSI X870E Carbon, which is definitely not the setup you would have if you are worried about PCIe lanes, but this will highlight the worst case scenario. This video is going to primarily focus on the performance differences between the different PCIe generations when paired with an RTX 5090. But if you are looking for the full review, that is available right now at techpowerup.com with our video comparison review coming out shortly. And starting off with 4K, we can see the best case scenario for the RTX 5090, at least when paired with older PCIe slots. PCIe 5.0 is the fastest in this test, though, and I'm sure this is the main reason why people are watching this video, it is only 1% faster than the PCIe 4.0, at least when paired with all 16 lanes. This is the same speed as you'd get as if you had a bifurcated 5.0 slot with only 8 lanes. Moving down the list, we have PCIe 3.0, which is able to deliver 98% of PCIe 5.0, PCIe 2.0, which is able to deliver 94% of PCIe 5, and the lowly PCIe 1.1 still kicking at 84%. That does mean that both the slowest and the fastest configurations of the 5090 are still faster than the 4090, with PCIe 1.1 still delivering 13 FPS better than the 4090, and PCIe 5.0 delivering 25 extra frames on top of that. Taking a quick peek at the minimum FPS though, does give us a little bit of foreshadowing, with the 5090 at 1.1 speeds falling a little bit below the RTX 4090. And that's just what we see at 1440p. PCIe 5.0 is still the fastest configuration, with PCIe 4.0 being 1% slower. PCIe 3.0 and PCIe 2.0 have fallen a little bit further behind at 96 and 90% of PCIe 5.0 respectively. But the biggest loser is obviously PCIe 1.1, which is only good for 76% of the 5.0 speeds, and while still good for 166 FPS on average, that is lower than the 179 FPS of the 4090. The minimum frame times though continued to get worse for the 1.1, with it now giving up 53 FPS of performance when compared to PCIe 5.0. 1080p is going to be the worst case scenario for the RTX 5090 with a slower generation PCIe slot, and with more and more games using upscaling to achieve high performance, it might just be the most realistic. Luckily for most users, the PCIe 4.0 slot is still only 1% slower than the PCIe 5.0, and small enough a difference that most people probably couldn't even tell. If you have a PCIe 3.0 slot, or more likely a bifurcated 4.0 slot, you are still good for 96% of the 5.0, but from here it gets bad pretty fast, with the PCIe 2.0 slot getting only 89% of the 5.0 and is now slower than the 4090. And the RTX 5090, when paired with only 4 lanes of PCIe 3.0 or 16 lanes of PCIe 1.1, is only good for 74% of PCIe 5.0 and is even slower than the RTX 4080. Ouch. But if you needed even more reason not to use your RTX 5090 with a PCIe 1.1 slot, that would be the minimum FPS. The good news for recent motherboard owners though is that even with a PCIe 3.0 slot, you still would have the fastest GPU available, with the minimum performance being just above the RTX 4090s. At least if you had all 16 lanes. With PCIe 2.0 or 8 lanes of 3.0, we're only good for 169 FPS and a bit below the RTX 4090. But if for some reason you do have a 1.1 slot, that is good for only 132.1 FPS and is all the way down with the RTX 4070 Ti. A few quick things to note is that enabling ray tracing doesn't really change the charts all that much. In fact, it might actually help your case if you insist on running a RTX 5090 in an older motherboard, and that all these results have been from a 25 game average, and the results do change from game to game, such as with Hogwarts Legacy, where all the results, even at 1080p, are pretty similar. And on the opposite end, you have games like Horizon Forbidden West, and in that case, PCIe 1.0 takes a 50% performance hit and is down with the RTX 3080. That being said, if you are considering adding a 5090 into an older rig, be sure to check your motherboard configuration to ensure you are giving it all 16 lanes. And if you can't, just plug in something cheap until you can afford to upgrade your motherboard first.